As we commemorate International Women's Day, let's take a look at the plight of women in war-torn countries as scores of women and girls in Ukraine continue to face hostilities after Russia's attack on that country, compounding the humanitarian disaster that has pushed more than 1.5 million people across Ukraine's borders. We're now joined by Professor Lindy Heinecken from the Department of Sociology and Social Anthropology at Stellenbosch University. Professor Heinecken, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. I think one thinks of the atrocities that we read, at least from the Lord's Resistance Army right through to the CAR or the DRC or Sudan. Women have always been vulnerable in situations of conflict, especially children as well, some who are taken to be child soldiers. Why is this?
Well, I mean, we all know that war is a highly gendered affair, and there is many reasons why women can be used as a weapon of war. One of them is to demoralize the enemy and to show that they are no longer able to protect their women. So it's a very effective strategy in warfare. And of course, women bear the brunt in this. And right throughout our history, we'll see how rape and sexual violence has been used as a weapon of war against women precisely for these reasons. And what is really sad is that, in fact, the higher the value placed on women and women's purity, the more they tend to be victims of violence in war.
You speak of some of the violations, rather, that women are faced with in these situations. You speak of rape being used as a weapon of war. From the studies that you have done and the case studies that you have seen, what has particularly stood out for you?
Well, of course, I think within the African context, the violations taking place in the Democratic Republic of Congo is probably the most severe because it has totally destroyed that social fabric of those societies. The extent of that violence and the psychological and physical and social harm that it has caused is just incomprehensible.
It's incomprehensible, and as we celebrate this day and we talk about rights that women should enjoy, and we look at these women who do not and some of these children who do not, how then or what then do we say about this aspect, you know, of women's rights in a time of conflict?
Well, I mean, there are various legal protections against women when there are such as we see in Ukraine, that require that both civilians and are protected. For example, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women. Most member states subscribe to this. The problem, of course, is implementing these to ensure that women are protected against discrimination and violence and can access life-saving services in times of crisis. And then this includes reproductive health services and goods.
You speak of discrimination against women and you point out the Ukraine crisis. We've also seen another element to the story where Black people were not allowed to get on trains or not allowed, to flee with everybody else when it came to leaving Ukraine. So where this issue is concerned, we also saw some women with children who were sleeping in the cold. So are these rights rather exclusive to a few?
Not at all. I mean, obviously, every human being is entitled to these human rights, and those type of aspects should be addressed through the necessary legal procedures. I mean, that is just totally unacceptable, especially to discriminate against people in times of crisis as we see today.
How can women be empowered during these tough times? Or is it a matter of just waiting it out and seeing what happens after to pick up the pieces?
I think, what is very interesting in situations like this, is women have got agency. They're not merely victims of war. We can see how women have become involved in outreach programs. They've been involved in dialogues with activists, with civil society leaders, have become involved in volunteer organizations and by assisting each other. We can also see now, and this to me has been quite significant, the extent to which women's voices are being heard at various levels in trying to resolve the conflict. So this is quite significant and does show that the Women, Peace and Security agenda has provided a space for women to actually have voice. But in terms of the empowerment of women, what is really important here is to see to what extent the necessary support structures are in place to enable women to exert their agency in this situation.
Professor Lindy Heinecken is with the Department of Sociology and Social Anthropology at Stellenbosch University. Thank you very much for availing yourself this afternoon.